Welcome to the Divorce View Talk Show. Hi, it's Joanie Winberg, divorce mentor and founder of FreshStartAfterDivorce.com and GettingAlongSolutions.com. It's always my pleasure to do this show together with my co-host, Rosalind Sedacca. Hello, Roz.
Hi, Joanie. Always good to see you. I'm Rosalind Sedacca. I'm a divorce and parenting coach, founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network for Parents, and author of How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce. And we have a wonderful guest tonight who is a big supporter of the Child-Centered Divorce Network and the work that Joanie and I do on divorce and helping people move through it in the simplest possible way. And her name is Terry Gaspard. She's a therapist, and I'm going to ask Terry to introduce herself and tell us more about herself.
Hello, Terry.
Hello there.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
And please tell us more about yourself.
Well, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and so I've been working with individuals, children, mostly women, couples, and families for over 30 years.
Okay, that's great. And the reason I paused there, for some reason, and I'm just saying this to our listeners, I can see you at the bottom of the screen when you're not talking, but when you talk, you're not coming to the top of the screen. So I'm not sure of the techie, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows once again, we're going to make sure they know your website and everything and how to get in touch with you. And sometimes techie does not explain what it's doing. But welcome to the show. And I know we want to talk a little bit today about daughters of divorce, building a healthy relationship. And this is a really interesting topic because we know all children are affected by divorce, but I like the way you're focusing on also, how's it affecting daughters. But has this been something close to your heart, Terry, of why you've gone this direction? Terry, can you hear me?
I think we've lost Terry. That must be why we lost the picture.
Okay.
Hopefully she will be trying to log back in with us.
She did fall off.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about this in the meantime. Have you found, Roz, yourself situations, because I know you have a son. I have a son and I have a daughter. But people that you've worked with and clients,
yeah.
They've talked about their daughters?
There's definitely a huge impact on daughters and sons with divorce, but when you have a daughter and you're a mother, obviously that bond is very close, and you're role modeling for your daughter behavior. She's watching you transition through the divorce. She may have seen experiences before the divorce, seen you stressed out, seen you in conflict issues, and then she's seeing you go through the divorce, and then there's that transition after the divorce period, which is such an important one. So it's very important for us to be able to communicate with our daughters and find out what's going on for them, as well as be able to guide them and help them resolve the divorce issues. And we're delighted that Terry is back. Can you hear us, Terry?
Yes, I'm not sure what happened. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay, but now we can see you and we can hear you. Just as we had lost you, I had asked, said to the listeners that our topic today is daughters of divorce and how building healthy relationships and so forth. But I guess my curiosity came up as far as you've gone this direction, and any particular reason why you focused on daughters of divorce?
There are a lot of reasons, Joanie, and primarily for myself, it started with my own experience. I was raised in a divorced family. Divorce runs in my family. So not only were my parents divorced, my grandparents and my great-grandparents. Wow. Keep in mind, I was raised in California and Los Angeles. And then in my own life, my children are not divorced yet, but my nephews are divorced, several of them. And myself, I've been divorced, and all of my sisters have experienced divorce. So I've always wondered why divorce tended to run in families. So my research and writing the book with my daughter really started from questions that she had, my 28-year-old daughter Tracy, about her parents' divorce, my divorce from her dad, and how it affected her view of herself and relationships, and why she felt she was always sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop, had some anxiety about commitment and trust issues. So we began interviewing a lot of daughters of divorce, and we ended up with a sample of over 220 women that we interviewed. And we got a lot of great data, we got wonderful information, and we felt that we helped them through these hours and hours of dialogue that we had with them. And we really were able to, you know, sort of capture key issues that women raised in divorced families tend to have. And it's not that they're failing or not doing well. Most of them are really successful women. The average age of the women in our study was 24, but we interviewed women starting at age 18 to the late 50s. But many of them had questions about how they could build better relationships, how they could work through some of their fear of their own relationships failing like their parents did, and have a sense that their commitments could be long-lasting and they wouldn't have so much anxiety about getting a divorce themselves.
How about your daughters are how old now?
Well, I have a daughter from my second marriage who's 16. I am currently married myself, and so I've been divorced once, but not twice.
Because what I'm thinking, and so is she feeling this this concern about as she gets older and gets into relationships? Has she talked about that?
My younger daughter, not so much so. She asks me questions because, you know, she sees a lot of the writing I do and the blogging and so on, and we certainly have open discussions about that. We live in a divorce culture, as you both know. So, I mean, we're all impacted by it by some degree or another. But all the studies show, including mine, that women are more impacted by their parents' divorce in terms of their self-esteem and their fear of their relationships failing than men are. And a lot of that, you know, that stems back to our brain development, the fact that our amygdalas and our hippocampus are more fine-tuned for remembering emotional experiences, whether they be positive or negative. And we also, I think, tend to be more nurturers, caretakers, and more influenced by how we felt our mothers handled the divorce and whether or not, you know, she coped well. Some of those messages, like my mother, for instance, unknowingly used to say things like, well, you can't trust men, you know, all men are alike, those kinds of comments. And I was raised with that because my parents divorced when I was 7 years old. So I was quite young, and then I saw my older sisters going through issues. So I was very much a nester. I wanted to get married, and I ended up getting married when I was 22. But I always had it in the back of my head that it probably wasn't going to work out, and I did try, but I myself ended up marrying someone I didn't have much in common with. I didn't understand, and I write about this in the book, that compatibility is important.
Yes.
One thing to have chemistry, we had plenty of that, but we didn't have core values in common, we didn't like to do the same things, and we also had extremely different ways of resolving conflict. These are all topics that I write about in the book.
What else did you learn from your study? Because this is such interesting information.
Well, I learned that trust issues were paramount for most of the women, and they have been for me and women that I know personally, because if you are raised in a situation where you see your parents separate and you don't have a lot of information from an adult perspective, as a child, it's really hard to really figure out why did this happen. So you have a tendency, I think, to worry that it could happen to you. So, you know, what I helped women do in my practice and also in the book is try to figure out how much of their trust issue comes from the past and how much of it is current. Because, as you both know, you can gauge a person's trustworthiness by what they say, their words, and their actions. And certainly learning to extend trust to the right partner is really crucial. Some women are so fearful that they're going to be betrayed because they perhaps saw their father betray their mother, or even sometimes their mother betray their father, that they avoid commitment altogether, and they live in a very isolated world where they have walls up, and they're very afraid of being intimate, being vulnerable. In fact, I have a whole chapter on vulnerability, the key to a long-lasting intimate relationship. Because if you can't be open and you can't be comfortable with yourself and express yourself, then you truly can't be close to another human being. And I found I used to have really intense issues with trust and vulnerability myself. So as I was doing the research and reading books from experts like Dr. Brene Brown, who writes about vulnerability, I was learning myself and trying to practice all these things, and giving some of the information to the women that I was interviewing. And they were informational sessions, but they also were somewhat therapeutic. So I have a huge following of these over 300 women, not all of them, but many of them stay in touch with me through Facebook, through LinkedIn, and they'll send me photos of their kids or their new partner or their husband. And I'm so excited for them because I have their permission, with their names changed and identifying information, to have their stories in the book, their quotes, what they went through, how they were able to resolve their trust issues. And the second biggest issue that women talked about was either a damaged or in some way changed relationship with their father.
I was just going to ask you about that. How have their relationships in general been, or how have they healed from that, or been able to reconnect with their fathers, or what did you find through your interviews?
Most of the women that I interviewed didn't feel that they had a really healthy relationship with their father. Some of them were able to work through it through some of the steps that I explain in the book. But part of the issue, Joanie and Rosalind, is that dads tend to spend more time with their sons after a divorce. Many researchers have highlighted that, like Nielsen and E. Mavis Hetherington. And so if they don't have shared parenting or joint custody, and they're not seeing their daughter on a regular basis, what happens is a lot of times the women I interviewed felt that there was something wrong with them, that they were flawed in some way because their dad wasn't coming to pick them up every weekend. So that damage has to be healed.
Definitely.
Just like the trust, you have to be able to identify what is the problem and not take it personally. Try to be understanding and forgive, or if you can't forgive, certainly accept the fact that if your dad's willing to reestablish a bond or connection with you, I don't believe it's ever too late.
Oh, I don't. I think you're right.
Yeah.
You can write.
Women are internalizing more, and so they're making it about them, which is so sad.
Exactly. I mean, it's so easy to see how that happens because, as women, we tend to do that anyway. And so if we don't understand, if we haven't had a dialogue with our fathers, which is exactly what happened to me because my father got remarried right away. No. And I didn't really realize that it wasn't that he didn't want to spend time with me, but he had a whole new family. So when I stopped seeing him on a regular basis, I felt that void. I felt that loss. And that daddy deprivation, which I call it in the book, can really stay with you. In my case, and many of the women I interviewed identified that they were looking for attention from men in the wrong ways because they wanted that validation that they didn't get from their father. And a lot of authors say that your relationship with your father is the first one that teaches you about love, teaches you how to be treated by a partner. And if it's not healthy or it hasn't been healed successfully, you can still have good relationships. There's still hope, but you have to understand that. And a lot of times education or being able to go to counseling doesn't happen until much later. So a lot of women from divorced homes, including myself, end up getting involved in relationships with the wrong guys or the wrong partners who aren't a good match for them, but because they're avoiding commitment and intimacy, they may stay with the wrong partner for too long. It's a toxic relationship, but it feels oddly comfortable. They're kind of, rehashing things from the past, or they might avoid commitment with someone that may be a good match for them because they're fearful that it won't work out. I've interviewed so many women that had to work through that fear of commitment, which is another key topic that you and I talked about the other day, Joanie.
Did you find that the women, found that they would be attracted to men who maybe paid attention to them, whether they were good for them or not, or a good match or not, and then found that they really weren't, and that could have lead down to another divorce or a breakup of a relationship?
There are a lot of women, exactly, there are a lot of women, reasons why women from divorced families are much more likely to get a divorce. And I highlight this in so many aspects of my book, because if you're a woman and you were raised in a divorced family, you're almost 3 times as likely to get a divorce than a woman who wasn't. Generally speaking, adult children of divorce are twice as likely. But being a woman really increases your risk for divorce. And why is that? A lot of it is what you said, picking a partner who's wrong for you and not really having the self-esteem, which is another topic that I write about in the book, to really be able to identify that you're becoming codependent, you're too focused on what their needs are, you're too worried about losing their affection or attention or approval. There's something called the approval trap, where people just get so focused on pleasing other people that they morph into something else. Yeah. So yes, truly women need to understand that they have a lot of risk factors and they can be overcome.
Oh, absolutely. But I would think the woman would have to be conscious to say, you know what, and I know I was. I didn't have, sometimes it was more of a toxic environment. No, there wasn't any divorce, but, I had to consciously make a choice to say, you know what, I want something different than that. I'm not blaming anybody. People do the best they can with how they're raised to be turned around to be parents. But I was conscious enough to say, but I want something better or something different for my kids. And so my goal was to work on me to be the best I could be. But if people aren't conscious to say, I can do something about this, or if they just bask in that negativity or that woe is me type thing, then
that victim role, right?
Right. Then it never heals. It never is healthy.
No, because you don't feel like you're worthy or deserving of the kind of love that you really need to be happy. Like, for instance, a lot of young women, they haven't really spent the time focusing on themselves. They may be thinking about their careers and other things that are really important. But picking the right partner is so important to our overall happiness in life. Think about how important that is. And how much time do we really spend focusing on that? And I have exercises and activities in the book that can help with that. And another key aspect is not rushing into an intimate, committed relationship. That was one of my main mistakes. I thought, I met my soulmate, let's set a date, right?
Terry, I'm curious about whether there's any difference in your research between women who initiated the divorce versus those who had the divorce thrust upon them, because there's always 2 sides. And did you find any difference in the women or their daughters?
That is not something that I studied, Roz. It's a very interesting topic, and it may be something that I'll study in the future. I don't really know the answer to that, but I do know that daughters of divorce are much more likely to initiate divorce. And I think, in general, I know women are more likely. 2/3 of divorces are initiated by women. You're shaking your head, so I know you know that.
Oh, yes. It's amazing.
And I think a lot of it is, in my case and many women, we hold things in, we internalize them, as you said, we bottle them up, and then it reaches a point where you feel incredibly unhappy, or maybe there are very serious things going on in the relationship. You might be afraid that your children are being exposed to too much conflict, which is really a key issue. And so, it's just really so critical that we take time to get to know someone. If we're dating a partner that we feel is trustworthy, that we feel we could be compatible with, take our time, ask questions, be vulnerable. I'm a big proponent of premarital counseling. If you have children from a former relationship, be careful. I know you write a lot about this, Rosalind. Take it extremely slow. Don't move in with the person right away and become an instant family. You know, but often I think that's a tendency that people have. You know, that
the other thing that I find, because I come from the personality side, and I think people have to really realize what they've done, and it's so common that we tend to be attracted to our opposites. And this is who we marry. And in my world, we have kind of a cute little saying I've mentioned before, is that opposites attract and then opposites attack.
That's a good one.
So the thing of it is, what if, you know, a lot of people say, you know, we just couldn't get along. Well, once they realize that they're opposites, it's like, okay, you're in that corner and I'm in this corner, but how can we meet in the middle? And I think this could be another show for sure, but this is what people are missing, and I don't think talking enough about, is that we are attracted to our opposites. And so if we're married, and like you said, Terry, you know, a woman that holds it in, you know, that's one particular type of personality, and they generally marry their opposite, who's dominant, demanding, controlled person.
Yes.
And that can go both ways, man or female, but it's generally the woman who's the holding it in, harmony person, and the other one more the controller. But, you know, I have seen people work it out, but once they became conscious of who they were and how they were communicating, it really helped them a lot. But to me, what you're saying is, you know, it's all and Roz and I say this all the time, got to be conscious and become conscious of what the heck's going on around you.
Be aware. The beginning of the book, by the way, there are 7 steps to restoring your faith and love for daughters of divorce. And the first one is examining your parents' divorce from an adult perspective. Getting a better handle on their divorce and what really happened, and yourself, and sort of like a self-analysis. You can do it through friends, you can do it through journaling, you can do it with therapy, you can do it in a lot of different ways. And then from there, you can start working through some of those, what Judith Wallerstein referred to, and I love this phrase, ghosts from the past. And you start tackling them and dealing with some of your hang-ups. And there is so much hope. I have seen incredible changes among the women that I've interviewed, because my study took place over 5 years. And so it motivated me to become very active on social media. And I can't wait to get up in the morning and go on Facebook, because I know I'm going to see some of my Facebook friends who are also women in the study. And, you know, we communicate about their lives. And some of them occasionally will come back for therapy, which is good. I myself am a big believer in therapy, because it's great to have a sounding board and have someone to check in with. And certainly if you have children, getting help with your children is so important, because children of divorce are so much in the middle between their parents. Yes. And I find, even being an expert in the field myself, I have to fight against that with my 2 adult children of divorce, and just always be mindful of the fact that they have loyalty conflicts, and they're going to feel in the middle between me and their dad, especially holidays. I know you, Joanie, and I were on that holiday blog, Huffington Post together, the show rather, and you know, so there are a lot of seasons, there are a lot of events, situations that come up in life where taking a look at yourself and taking responsibility for your part in it, and being more mindful of your impact upon other people, but also getting more a sense of the kind of relationships that you deserve and that are empowering for you is really key. Definitely.
And I want to make sure they know what website to go to connect with you, and can they pre-sell or pre-purchase your book? Or
not yet. The book originally was going to be on the bookshelves and on Amazon in the fall of 2015. I just found out, due to the fact that Source Books, our publisher, is publishing many other books in the fall, they want our book to launch in January of 2016, because they want to.
The title of the book?
Daughters of Divorce.
Daughters of
Becoming your parents' legacy, and building love, trust, and intimacy and long-term relationships.
And what's the best website for people to connect with you?
MovingPastDivorce.com.
Okay, excellent, excellent. MovingPastDivorce.com.
Do you ever do groups, Terry, or do you just do individual counseling?
I was doing groups for a while. I'll probably go back to it because just now I'm just finishing the last editions on the book. I've done some seminars. I really enjoy doing those. I plan to do more radio shows like this, more online chats. But I do a lot of individual counseling and a lot of blogging. I really enjoy the blogging.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's great.
Yes.
Any other tip you'd like to leave for our listeners, whether it's daughters of divorce or in general, but I know we've been focusing on daughters of divorce.
I would say don't let your parents' divorce or your own divorce define you. You know, even though we think we've gotten beyond all the stigma that surrounds divorce, it's still very much a part of our culture. So just understand that really relationships are our teachers. We learn so much about ourselves, and if we can take that information and move on from it and, you know, learn from it and grow and develop, there is so much hope for our children and for ourselves that we don't have to repeat the patterns of the past.
That's an important lesson to remember, and it's good news, because sometimes we look with dread at our futures, and it's very important to realize that we really have a bright future ahead regardless of what stage of life we're at and what age we're at.
Definitely, and forgiveness is always a key concept. I know both of you ladies talk and write a lot about that, and it's one thing to say, I forgive you, and it's another thing to have a forgiving lifestyle or practice where you're trying to detach yourself and you're trying not to take things personally and realize that people do make mistakes. That doesn't mean you accept everything they do or that you don't have hurt feelings about it. But you let go of the anger and some of the resentment, and you don't let it affect your day-to-day interactions with your children, with your former spouse. That's been a big lesson for me and for a lot of the women I've worked with, to try to move beyond the resentment and move into a more forgiving mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we love the work you do, Terry.
Thank you. Likewise.
And thanks so much for being on the show. I got a little tickle in my throat, but Roz, would you like to tell them about the divorceview.com website?
Yes. All of our shows are archived at divorceview.com. So if you have an interest in any facet of divorce and its aftermath, you'll find one or many more shows on that topic at Divorce View. We have dozens and dozens of them with experts who are really well versed in the kind of divorce, conscious divorce, that we're always talking about. So be sure to visit divorceview.com, and you can join us live every Wednesday at 6 o'clock Eastern Time on the Google Hangouts, and even ask questions if you want to participate with us. So thank you for joining us. For Joanie Winberg and myself, we want to thank you. And thank you again, Terry. It's a pleasure talking with you.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye.